Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cheap Seats. It's been a interesting week, but this is the podcast where we talk all things Premier League, including who got fired, who still has a job, who thinks they're the last man standing. That's going to be quite an interesting discussion. But yeah, we talk all things Premier League. Just so you know, Arsenal's still on top of the log, so that's good. They go to Anfield this weekend in what Gary Neville thinks is an acid test, even though this entire season they've outperformed expectations. But anyway, I've got Wahid and Dean here. How are you guys doing?
Good. Better after last night. The weekend was a disaster, so I'm glad we didn't shoot after that. So I'm glad we waited till today to shoot.
But Newcastle back in the Champions League, looking good.
They deserve it. They deserve to be there.
And Stellini telling us, "Oh look, last season we're around 50 points, so yeah, nothing's changed. It's just the same." But anyway, this show is sponsored by Classic Shirts ZA, so please do go check them out. They've got some really awesome shirts. The kit of the day is to remind everyone that Chelsea still has a chance to win the Champions League, even though they're having this really bad season. Last time they fired, or one of the few times they fired a manager in mid-season, they won the Champions League. They did it with Tuchel as well recently, and now they did it the last time with Roberto Di Matteo when he took over this monster Chelsea team. And so Todd Bowley and his band of Americans think they can do the same this time by bringing back a club legend. So I didn't like this kit, Wahid. I wasn't a fan of it. I thought it was one of those Adidas were like, look, we're just going through the season. Like, here's a kit. It's blue. I'm going to try to do some designs. But if you're a Chelsea fan, you can get it. What do you think?
Isn't that what Adidas do with every kit? They just put three stripes on Adidas on the sleeve, Adidas logo on it, and it's in the color of your club. That's all they ever do, to be perfectly honest. But what I remember of that kit is how absolutely unbelievable Juan Mata was that season. When he came to Old Trafford, I was expecting that Chelsea version of Juan Mata, and he really lit the Premier League up in that season when they ended up winning the Champions League. He was absolutely delightful to watch.
We have Cyrus. Just as we come on, but Cyrus, what's your memory of this kid? Huh?
I heard delightful to watch, and that's what calls me on board.
Okay. We're talking about one match.
You mean one of the kings of Stamford Bridge?
Yeah, you could say so. Kings of Stamford Bridge. Yeah, I think
he was a fantastic player.
Yeah. Cyrus, I think you might need to either move that mic closer to your face. I don't know how close you can
put it. You mean like right into my mouth? Does that sound better?
No.
Yeah, you've got a lot of echo. And that room is padded. But
that's even
better.
Cool. But yeah, you can get this kit at Classic Shirts ZA. You can use the discount Cheap Seats 99 to let them know that we sent you. So please do go check them out and support them. Really great products that they have there. Okay, so let's start with this week. So we started this weekend on the Sunday. Leicester had just lost to Crystal Palace with a last-minute goal from Mateta. And then the next day, Leicester somehow found money to fire Brendan Rodgers when you thought that throughout all season they said they didn't have enough money. So that was funny. They found money under the bed to pay Brendan Rodgers. And then in the middle of the United game, when United were getting hammered, Chelsea decided to do the right thing and fire Graham Potter. So now you've got three clubs. You've got Tottenham, you've got Chelsea, and you've got Leicester, who do not have full-time managers. Obviously, Christian Stellini denied Spurs the new manager bounce because it's Conte light.
Because it's Spurs. I think we can stop at that.
Then we had something interesting with Jurgen Klopp on Monday saying he's the last man standing, which is what we're going to talk about. But anyway, let's start with Chelsea. Cyrus, Todd Bowley was looking at Project 2030. He gave this guy 5 years. What
6 years?
Yes. What got to this point? Obviously, they were playing badly, but they didn't want to fire him. So, what was the straw that broke the camel's back to fire Harry Potter? Graham Potter. Sorry.
I think the main thing here is that you got to look at what the story behind the scenes seems to be. That a lot of the players just completely, they weren't bought into whatever he was trying to do. You couldn't see any progress, and they were really reluctant to let go of Graeme Potter. But the main thing was the results. It's a results-driven business. This is sport. Now, yes, Bowley and them, when they looked at the Dodgers, thought, okay, look, we can invest in a manager that franchise and allow it to take the time that it needs, because we can. There's no Champions League in baseball, right? You're either in it to win the big prize, or you're just taking part. In football, it's not like that. You've got to be able to say that you're in it to try and win it all. And this is way below the pale for what Chelsea have expected from their managers in the past. So they really looked at this and said, no. The time had come where they couldn't look past the non-existent plan. Like, you suddenly had players coming on that made no sense. And even for people who aren't football guys specifically, they couldn't see what the changes were like, what they were, what was actually happening for the team going forward. So they had to make a decision, and they made it late. But having said that, they didn't want to make it at all. They wanted this guy to be there long term. They'd invested heavily in his long-term future there, but they'd expected that things would work out better than they have, and they just kept getting worse and worse. And outside of the issues around some of the injury to key players, like N'Golo Kante in that game against Liverpool, looked like the world beater that we know he is. And when you've got him playing next to an Enzo Fernandez, you can suddenly see what could be. But then you then look up front, and the very same problems Chelsea have had all season persist. And that's a manager-led issue. Havertz as the false nine has not worked. It worked for Tuchel to win the Champions League final, but even then he played with a Timo Werner, who was a goal scorer, so he at least had another threat next to him. Now you've got it's a blunt instrument. That's what Chelsea are, and they don't even have like a battering ram. Let me even say, vote Weghorst. I would take anybody who would do the job.
You had Aubameyang.
So there's clearly issues around Aubameyang. There's clearly issues around Mason Mount. Neither of them are playing. Mount's issues are contractual, and he's also been struggling with injury. Aubameyang was a Tuchel guy, and they got rid of Tuchel, and they're just like, okay, I guess we're just not going to play this dude. So I will say this. This is one of the biggest problems Chelsea have actually had, is losing Armando Broja, who would have played the majority of the games this season if he'd been fit. When he got injured, it completely derailed the second option striker that they had and a free striker that they had. Now you've got these other guys they've signed, like David Fofana, who just doesn't really play, has been a signing for the future and not somebody they want to use now. So Bowley and them have painted themselves into a corner here, and now they're going to ask Frank to just oversee it. Look at it this way. It's to placate the fan base. They can't keep Bruno Salter there. There's 10 games is too many games. 10 games is too many games.
Salter.
One game should have been too many games.
No, exactly. So when I look at the Frank Lampard appointment, it makes some logical sense. He's been at the club. He doesn't have to learn anything about the club. He knows where the toilets are, for instance, right? Because he's been so crap. But as a manager, but the other thing is, he didn't do a terrible job when he was there. Getting to the FA Cup final, all of that stuff. There were things that Frank had going for him when things were going well. He will just come in and say, "Look, lads, we're here to play. Ashley Cole, you know him, you've seen him around the block. He'll come and chat at you for a bit. JT will come in for team talks when we need to. Let's try and get that spirit of 2012, see what we can do in the Champions League. And in the league, just get as many wins as possible." And I think that's the point.
Dean?
I like, as weird as it sounds, I actually agree with Cyrus. Like, it does make sense at this point. You're writing off a season, but you're planning for next. So you're not getting yourself into a point where you panic when you where you panic choosing a manager right now. You're giving yourself a couple of months to go and figure out who's going to be the best possible manager to work with the squad.
Isn't this how Ole got the job full time?
It is how Ole got the job full time, because United thought United panicked. And that was the big problem. Ole got the job on an interim basis and shot the lights out in those first couple of games. But I mean, all he needed to do was be better than Mourinho last couple of games, which wouldn't have been hard. I mean, Cyrus could have gone and been better than Mourinho's last couple of games.
No, Jose is the boss.
And you saw it was like soda water under Ole, insofar as that he started off like a house on fire, and it petered out towards the end of the season. That season, he got the job on the back of that game in Paris when everything was stacked against us, and that was a silly decision by United's hierarchy. I think this would probably be more along the lines of Ranić's time in charge, though it's more sort of a combination of the Ole appointment and the Ranić appointment, because you're getting a club legend in charge. He knows his way around the club. He knows what he's doing. He's got the respect of the players already, and he's just sort of treading water while you decide who's going to be the man to take this club forward.
So
it's very interesting to hear who Cyrus wants, because I think I know who I would take in the situation. But again, I wanted Pochettino, not Ten Hag, so what do I know?
Cyrus, if he shoots the lights out,
no.
Yes,
it's a no. Still a no from me.
No,
please.
If Frank Lampard wins the Champions League, look, I think the problem is. The problem is, if he does do the unthinkable, like a Di Matteo, then the whole chorus of he needs to get the job full time starts. And then the reality is, we've been here before with Frank Lampard, so we know exactly what it's going to be. And I think Frank would never say no to being given an opportunity to run the club again. And they've spent money this time. If you remember, there was that whole transfer ban that happened and he couldn't spend on players. Now they've gone with the complete opposite and bought everybody under the sun. I don't think it would be any better. If anything, there might be some lessons that Frank learned from his time at Chelsea and at Everton, which is to shore up the defense. And boy, do they have defenders there. But does he have the coaching nous to make that work? I'm not sure. I just don't think that they should. And I think that everybody is entered into. It's like you're asking if a side chick wants to be the main chick, right? Like at the end of the day,
give her 6 months while you're separated.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to be. It's never going to be a perfect situation. I do think, though, that for me, to Wahid's question, I would have Luis Enrique. Primarily because he's got the experience. He's worked with bigger players. He can tell people he's won big stuff. What is Ralph Ranić? Sorry. In fact, that's how much I rate Nagelsmann. But Nagelsmann is more a philosophical, Potter-esque, let's build for the future kind of manager. Chelsea have been burned by appointing that guy. And I think they're probably going to lean more. That's what I've read, is that Bole and them are looking more at an experienced guy, though they still, those batting their eyelids at Nagelsmann. I think Enrique would be the solid choice. Pochettino would be a comfortable choice because he's managed in the Premier League before. And Nagelsmann would be like another throw of the dice. Let's see what could happen. He's a philosophical appointment. But I'd go Enrique.
Dean,
the problem
that Chelsea has from can I just get Dean in quickly?
Let me say something. Go ahead. Just one thing.
Yeah.
The problem that Chelsea Spurs have is that we know that Ancelotti's leaving. We know that Christophe Galtier is getting fired. And when you heard that Graham Potter was being fired, as a Spurs supporter, do you feel as though they've just like usurped the fact that you guys also are going now for the same players or coaches, or are you still I want Nagelsmann or Poch and that's it?
Yeah, I think it's while I watched that Chelsea Villa game on Saturday night, and at the end of it I sent a message to our WhatsApp group saying Potter's gone, Chelsea get Nagelsmann, Spurs get Potter, because that's just the way it would probably. I saw it playing out just because as soon as a club like Chelsea has a managerial position open, I think it's obviously more attractive to some of the top tier managers just based on exactly they're willing to spend. You know that if you just mention a person in your sleep, Todd Bowley's probably going to go and buy him for you the next day. So
he's like Candyman.
Yeah, like you can get whatever you want at Chelsea. So I'm quite happy for Luis Enrique to go to Chelsea. And the reason why I'm saying that is I think, just to counter what Cyrus said there, Chelsea got burned by the project manager person. And it's a little bit similar to, and are now looking for like a bigger name to kind of come in and take the club. And I think that is, I don't want to say the same, but similar to what Spurs had when they fired Pochettino. Chelsea fired Tuchel, which was a good thing. And they're now looking for a bigger name to come in. And it could work. Like with Chelsea, with that squad, with that team, it could work, the bigger name. It didn't work at Spurs. And it'll be interesting to see which way it goes, because I think one of those top-class managers like Luis Enrique could walk in there and could make it work. But it could also go the Spurs way, where it works for maybe 6, 7, 8 months. Something happens, then you try the next top-tier manager and you try and get...
Sorry. I got to come in here. If there's one thing, Mourinho talked about this, Conte talked about this at Spurs, it's a mentality issue. There are still players in that Chelsea team who've won stuff. How many Spurs players have?
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's a fair... I'm not saying it's going to be exactly the same. Chelsea, it's probably more likely that it succeeds with a big-time manager at Chelsea. I'm just saying there is an element of you now looking to bring in a bigger name because you brought in someone that was a project manager 10 years, seeing it didn't work. You had people changing in the corridor because they didn't have time. They were bullying him, whatever it was. And now it's not working. So you switch automatically to something completely opposite. It could go either way, but it's probably more likely going to work at Chelsea. And they have the players and the capabilities to sort of turn it on. My big thing is I want them to stay as far away from a Poch or a Nagelsmann as possible. So that's why.
But the problem
Lampard
with those
they
haven't won anything. They haven't won. I'll be back. They haven't won anything. Sure. Thanks, Harris. It's like Nagelsmann led a Bundesliga for half a season. And we call it the Farmers League, but does he have that winning mentality?
Typically Spurs to lead the league for half a season and then.
But this is the thing, right? So we spoke about it previously.
For the job.
Well, Hids also said it. Like Spurs don't need. You can take any manager in the world right now, put them in Spurs, and they're not going to win the league in the next 3 years, 4 years, because there's so many things broken in that club. You need a complete reset, sort of clearing out everything. You need a project manager. That's what you need at Spurs right now, and that is what a Nagelsmann would be, in my opinion. I don't think a Luis Enrique is in that position, and that's why I wouldn't want him to come to Spurs. We need someone that's going to come in, fresher ideas, new ideas, young, so they can see the club through for the next couple years, even like a Poch, whatever it might be. But we need that kind of manager where
the return of the X.
I don't really care, to be honest. I'm so over it at the moment. Like Stialini could stick around, and I'd be like, oh, here we go. Like it's fun.
Look, he denied you the new manager bounce.
But that's the thing. Spurs are playing the exact same way, and I know we spoke about it before. But Spurs are the same Spurs, just without Conte's just not there now. So they're playing the same system, and nothing's changed. It's just the same nonsense, the same drip.
Do you want a different interim manager, even if it's Ryan Mason?
I would want them. You know what? I saw someone come on Twitter, and Yaya Toure is the under-18 coach. Throw Yaya Toure in there. What's the worst that could happen?
Tottenham.
Like he's in the coaching system. So put someone completely left field. Let's change system. Go forward the back. Play 3-5-2. I don't really care anymore because like nothing is working at the moment. You can't control games. You're not that on the front foot. Everton were basically bossing you around. We've lost to three of the bottom three teams. We've lost against all three of them at away from home. Even when you're in the lead, you can't control a game. So something completely fresh. The players aren't listening to the system at the moment, or they're not interested in the system. Change it. And again, it's kind of like the system. You're not going to finish in the top four. So whether you finish 5th or 6th, it's not going to be a big deal. And I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's
Conference League and Europa League, dog.
But I'm not sure it's time to write off the league, the top 4, Dean, because you're still in with a shout. So if you already write off, sorry,
we're in a shout. So like when we were, because I couldn't believe that if we beat
you're fourth, like literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, but we would be third if we beat Everton. And I was like, United, I knew they dropped off, but I didn't realize the extent to what the drop-off was. And obviously there's games in hand, and it's a bit weird at the moment. But I was like, damn, if we win this game, maybe we can, sort of stick around. And then again, it's the hope, and then Spurs. And then the hope, and then Spurs. So that's why I'm saying I'm so sick of saying, oh, but you could finish top 4.
Why don't you want Brendan Rodgers for 10 games at least? Close out the season.
Because I think
Brendan Rodgers is going to take an interim job.
Yeah,
I think he's above that.
I think Rodgers is West Ham's next coach, because I reckon they get rid of David Moyes in the summer, and then I think Potter is a Leicester coach.
There's a couple of clubs that need new managers, but there's managers who shouldn't touch certain clubs. And West Ham is one of those clubs which, as a manager, you wouldn't touch. They don't have a sporting project. They've never had a sporting project. They don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. And until they modernize the structure behind the club, no good manager should be taking that job. You're on a hiding to nothing at the end of the day in the West Ham job. Leicester's job has become like the West Ham job. They've also completely lost the plot with regards to their off-field stuff. So 3, 4, 5 years ago, they had a really good project.
Really well-run club, Leicester.
They were a really well-run club with a really good project.
Really well.
That project has fallen to shit. So again, you're looking at Potter and you're thinking the obvious destination is Leicester. Yes, it would have been the obvious destination maybe 3 years ago for a manager like Graham Potter. It's no longer the obvious destination. That those clubs are the sort of clubs where you look at it like as a manager, and like it's probably like Erik ten Hag looking at Man United and thinking, I'll take this, but I'm going to be interviewing you. You're not interviewing me. You're going to tell me what you're going to do to get this club going in the right direction before I take this job, rather than the club going, what can you bring? It should be the other way around, with Potter looking at the likes of West Ham and Leicester at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Obviously, another team to add to this is Crystal Palace, which isn't the same. But Crystal Palace have never had a sporting project. They just find luck in going to France and picking somebody.
Keep Zaha every year. That's their project. Just keep Zaha, and then you'll be fine. You'll stick around. Like that's all they do.
Yeah, and so, okay, let me move on to this one. This because it's weird because it came out of his press conference on Monday when he was talking about all the managers being fired, and he said that he was the last man standing.
Yeah, he said, let's address the elephant in the room.
Yeah,
he's like,
which I thought was quite cheeky.
That I should be, if these people are getting fired, I should be fired too, is what he said.
Yeah.
And is he untouchable?
I think so. I mean, we've spoken about this before, and if you look at the way Liverpool's performing at the moment, like that game against City, that Salah goal was complete fluke. Like Jota just laid it back, Salah got hold of it fine. The rest of that game, they were nowhere. And even against Chelsea in midweek, like they're playing their B team against Chelsea fine, whatever it is. They're keeping their players ready for Arsenal this weekend.
Are they?
But that's the thing, are they? No one knows. Like, why are you playing your B team?
I get if he was punishing them, like all the senior players, to say, you guys think you're undroppable. Well, I'm dropping you for Chelsea. But like, I was sitting there going,
but here's what I'm going to say on this. As a person who could not hate something as much as I hate Liverpool, there's nothing I could hate as much as I hate Liverpool. I would be very happy to see them fire.
Oh, I'd love it.
To see them fire Jurgen Klopp.
It would be like Arsenal firing Arteta now. I would love it.
Sorry?
It would be like if Arsenal fired Arteta. I would be
because I think that Klopp is honestly the glue in that club. He is what keeps them going. They've had really bad recruitment. They had a period of really good recruitment, and then they've had a period of really bad recruitment. That bad recruitment has caught up with them. And I think that if there was anybody apart from Jurgen Klopp in charge of that squad, they'd be in a lot worse of a position than they are right now. So if you're asking me as someone who detests everything about that club, yes, please, fire Jurgen Klopp. Appoint someone else. Appoint Steven Gerrard. Appoint Pep Linders, who's his assistant, who's always been touted as the next Liverpool boss. Like, do something like that, because it's going to make me really happy, because it's going to put them into absolute free fall. Until they address the issues in their squad, no manager is going to manage them better than Jurgen Klopp. So yes, he should be untouchable. If you are Liverpool looking at him, he is absolutely magic. And unless they go and rehaul that squad, which they really need to do, they need a whole new midfield. They need to replenish the defense a little bit, because Van Dijk is looking old and tired. Fabinho is looking old and tired. Trent has never been able to defend, and now that the cogs around him are failing, it's really just like chickens coming home to roost with Trent. It's not new. This is not a new thing with Trent. It's just that the people who mask his deficiencies are no longer in the form that they previously were. So yes, Jurgen Klopp should be untouchable. If he's not, it's going to make me really happy.
On that, I saw something really interesting from a Liverpool fan saying they were previously supporting Arsenal to win the league, because they don't want City to win the league at all, because of that sort of decent rivalry. But now they are 100% back in City, and it's just purely because if you have a look at their track record, right? Klopp walked into that club, had to change the whole thing from top to bottom, and then they won the league, right? Arteta's been there 3-4 years. He's taken a bunch of youngsters, and he could win the league this season. So if Arsenal win the league
this season,
it's if Arsenal, which please, I still hope they don't win the league, it kind of shows that Liverpool, it kind of, I don't want to say sort of discounts Liverpool win, but it does, in an essence, kind of reduce that goodwill that they may have built up with Klopp, saying, well, he is the Messiah that walked into this club. So it's kind of like, it's an interesting way to look at it in terms of if Arteta does it, then is Klopp as good as what everyone thinks? Because you could get someone else that could have done what he did, or maybe not have done exactly what he's done in the time, but it's not unreasonable to expect it. So I think that argument is valid, but also not, because I think that Jurgen Klopp has managed in the Premier League, in like the Premier League's golden era, it would be very hard to outdo Pep, and he's done that once. And it's almost like back in the 90s when you won one league, you were outdoing Fergie, and one league was really a massive achievement because you were outdoing the master. Pep is now this Premier League's version of Fergie, and for anybody to outdo him is a massive achievement. So I don't know if that argument holds weight insofar as that, Klopp only did it once. Yes, but he did it once. And he also did the Champions League, and he also won a bunch of other things with Liverpool in a period when they hadn't won things in many, many years. It's just an interesting way that you can see Liverpool fans are thinking.
I just look at it as who are you going to appoint that is better than Jurgen Klopp? And I don't see anybody who's going to be better than Jurgen Klopp. Please, do it. Please, appoint Nagelsmann. Someone dumb, because that will make me really happy.
You're on mute.
Nobody's going to do a better job than him.
I have, and Klopp is untouchable. And to Wahid's point, you have to pay respect to what the man has done, but he's not reached Wenger levels of untouchable and taken the club to absolute nonsense. We have to remember this is also what happened at Arsenal, right? Where Wenger's shine started to go, and everyone was like, "Oh, this old man, he can't do anything." It's not as if Klopp is devoid of ideas; he just hasn't had investment in the areas that he's needed to invest, right? And there is a bigger thing happening at Liverpool in terms of what's happening around the ownership stuff that will affect what happens with Liverpool going forward. So I think that Klopp will definitely talk the game about, look, I might be the next manager fired. But the reality is he's bought himself so much, because we talk about the league title, the Champions League stuff. He's done stuff that Pep hasn't been able to do at City, right? So if he had to look at and try and draw a direct parallel, he'll say, look, yes, I've only won one league title and had one runner-up placing behind Pep, but I've won the Champions League 3 times in the time that Pep has been there. So you'll have that as being the argument. But look at it this way. I think Liverpool definitely understood from an ownership perspective they couldn't get into the same market that United are in when United comes up for sale, primarily because they then get compared to United and then everything around the pricing becomes problematic. So they would wait for the United sale to go through and then look for somebody who's interested in purchasing Liverpool and saying, right, that's the value that United were at. I mean, Paul, you've seen what's happening in the NFL and Lamar Jackson, right? At some point you set a price. So anyway, to cut this short, Liverpool are waiting, and I think they're biding their time to see what happens to the United sale. Once that happens, they will then look at try to push their sale through as quickly as possible. That should then give Jurgen Klopp some money to invest in new players, because he doesn't want to let go of like a Mo Salah. In essence, that will be the key thing, to sell a big player to reinvest the cash. And Arsenal have also showed that then puts you on a really long journey to success.
Look, just on that, I don't think United are going to be sold. Personally, I don't think that sale is going to go
where
through.
they're performing now.
But Liverpool need them to be.
I think that this is going to end with the Glazers getting a valuation for the club, and then Joel and Avram staying on, and the other siblings selling a minority stake in the club to an investment company, a private equity company, something along those lines. But I don't think there'll be a full sale of Man United at this point in time.
But that's fine, because it gives you an evaluation for Liverpool to work off of. As long as Manchester United, whatever stake is in the water, the only good thing for all of us, for everyone else, is that they won't be able to invest in their squad in the summer, because that's going to add some sort of extra to the price, because they'll be like, but we've invested in this midfield. You guys need to pay us back, when that's not how you value you'd value Liverpool in the first place. So they're going to still be stuck in the summer with looking for bargain buyers around Europe. They will get down the money.
Liverpool will find a way to sign some quality value players in that team, because I think that teams like Chelsea are so jam-packed with guys who cannot all make the first team. And so guys like Mason Mount or Conor Gallagher, who have Premier League experience, will be on the market. And at some point, the guys will turn around and say, no, it's fine. That's what the owners will do. They'll make the mistake of selling to Liverpool, and that's what will happen. But there will also be other teams that will have to let go of some of their players. So you look at guys at West Ham. Fine, they might not be in the race for Declan Rice. But what about some of the other guys who are in that team, like a Jared Bowen? You know, exactly.
I wouldn't touch Paqueta. I wouldn't touch him.
Why?
Horrendous at West Ham.
You wouldn't, but I think Paqueta is the kind of player who needs to work within the system. Liverpool will find value where they need to find value. I think that's the key thing. It's just that they've had zero money to spend. And I also feel as if they're going to find ways to make money. What hurts is losing people like Roberto Firmino for absolutely nothing. They cannot be in that situation, because much like in the NBA, if you don't get value back for your players, you're in a complete hole. Yeah.
So the other thing for a lot of the clubs who don't have managers right now is you don't want another big club to fire their guy. We know of PSG, we know of Real Madrid. Those are the next two. If someone else opens up, Spurs, to a certain extent, Chelsea's still sitting on its own island because it's a nice little fancy project. But for Spurs, for Leicester, even anybody else, it makes it even hard. Is there any managerial job around Europe if someone gets fired will cause a lot of problems in the market, especially for you, Dean?
Unfortunately, I think any club could fire their coach, and then the Spurs will be competing with them just because of the state that we're in at the moment. But I would say that it's an interesting way to look at it. I think there's a few clubs where their coaches are promising. Someone like, that Spurs are at least looking at, like that Amaron from Sporting and things like that, where he's also a name that then, as soon as Chelsea fired, got thrown around there. So I think that Chelsea's obviously the one, Spurs is obviously another one. And if you have to look at the Premier League, I think we've discussed West Ham and Leicester. I don't think it's real options over there. But then if you do start looking a little bit abroad, obviously the Real Madrid issue with Ancelotti, we know. But you then start looking
at that. Enrique won't go there.
No.
Yeah,
no.
That's why Chelsea's so great, and that's why everyone should be going for him, because even PSG, I don't think he'll go there.
But then, so let's have a look. Like, I know it's a bit of a weird one, but then if you have a look at like Italy, AC Milan's coach is not fantastic, and they could probably look at if you had to fire the Milan coach. Milan becomes a prospect, especially with some of the players that they got there, like that Rafael Leao, that they might keep, might not keep. Even a Spalletti and Allegri at Juventus. The Italian league is in a bit of a sort of weird place where they've got all of their issues, but those jobs are still somewhat attractive given the players that are there, given the sort of lack of competition, but you will succeed if you go into one of those sort of top 4 teams in Italy. So I would be a little bit concerned if Milan fired their coach, just because there are fans or there are coaches that we're looking at that would probably want to go there. But overall, I do think that the more and more I think about it, the more I think the 2 names coming to Spurs are Poch or Nagelsmann. And it hurts me to think that we haven't even made contact with Poch. He's open to talk, and we haven't even made contact with him.
But why would Daniel Levy do that?
Yeah.
No, I know why he wouldn't, because he's a whatever.
Well, but isn't that the bad blood, water under the bridge, all of that stuff?
Yeah.
No, it is. But that's why I think we are pinning all of our hopes on a bit of a Nagelsmann, and then potentially De Zerbi from Brighton, who's I think payout is 10 million. You can't recruit him until the summer, and the buyout clause is like 10 million in the summer. Apparently,
I don't think
they didn't include something specifically during the season because he wanted to focus on Brighton.
Wahid, does that deter any young managers from taking big roles, especially what happened to Graham Potter? Will that deter Roberto De Zerbi to go to a Spurs? Or
no, I think all those young managers will have aspirations to manage at clubs bigger than the ones that are, especially if they're managing at Brighton. You might sometimes have a young manager who maybe just looks at the longer game and thinks that, well, if I do a good job at Brighton for a couple more years instead of just doing it for half a season, I might have a bigger range of clubs than just Spurs coming after me at some point, which is what Poch did. Poch was biding his time at Spurs when there was a bunch of people after him thinking, I'm going to have big options after this. And well, that didn't work out that well for Poch in the end because things come and go.
He went to another place.
Yeah, another one to look out for is potentially the Man United job because if Qatar buy us, PSG fire their coach, they just move our coach to PSG. Yeah. Just give Eric Ten Hag. It's like intercompany sales.
That'll be weird. I think one last one for you, Cyrus. Graham Potter, where does he go from here? Should he take a break? Should he find another club?
He's going to take a break till summer or till the summer.
Mm-hmm.
He'll also have so much money. I did read though that they don't have to pay the entirety of his 6-year contract. So they had put in stipulations as to how much they'd have to pay him out if they fired him. But tell me you don't see the Leicester job being the perfect job for Graham Potter.
I see Spurs failing.
I would say Spurs if Leicester wasn't
open.
open.
Why? Yeah, I can see why. Look, let's also not forget the West Ham job will also be open soon. There's only so much. Yeah, but it's one of those that will definitely be up, right? And then
they fire him, even though he's got to not be relegated.
I think especially after that Newcastle game, 5-1.
He's got to go.
You said, do you think that Leicester is the perfect job for Graham Potter? And I think no, I don't think so. I think that Graeme Potter is the perfect manager for the Leicester hierarchy. But as Graeme Potter, I don't think I'm looking at Leicester and thinking that's the perfect job for me. I think that unless they're sorting out the structure behind the club, I don't think a manager like Graeme Potter goes, that's a good job.
Oh, Wahid, look, I hate to bring up these kind of haram things during Ramadan, but some guys will always think that they can be with the bad bees in the club. And I don't think that Graeme Potter will know that, because he was there and he couldn't handle. And this is the situation that we're in now.
But
where
can we just take a step back though? Because when Potter moved to Chelsea, we were all like, "Oh, he's a pretty good coach.
Not
like,
all.
He's a good
Cyrus
coach."
I said
Fine,
he is
Cyrus
a good
not,
coach.
but the rest of us were like, "He's a good Brighton. Look what he's done.
He's
Brighton,
a good coach." No, dude. But remember, even when you did say that, it kind of felt like, oh, but he's a sweet kid. He should be given a chance.
Well,
and that was
turns out he
exactly
didn't
what it
sway
was.
in the dressing room. The players haven't never heard him sway, and he never raised his voice.
Who knew swearing was so important in football? But the point that I'm going to make here, though, is I think that Graeme Potter will also know that his reputation is also tainted by failing at the Chelsea job. And so to Wahid's point about what would Graeme Potter want, Graeme Potter would want a team in the Premier League. And right now, he should take whatever Premier League job comes his way, because if not that, it's the Championship or back to Oslo. And I don't think he wants either of those. So I think the thing is, that's why I look at the Leicester job, because you look at the level of talent there, you look at the amount of development that club needs to go through in order to be better. All of those things are what Graeme Potter will be, he knows he'll look at the tools and say, this will work for me. And the other thing will be that they give people time there. Brendan Rodgers was so bad for so long. And they also looked at, okay, fine, we can't fire him because we don't have the money. But Graeme Potter's scouting network across Europe in the bargain bins is second to none. So I think they'd be able to find some ways to make things work at
Does
Leicester
Crystal Palace work for
there.
Potter?
So I was going to say that too, because I think the other thing is, yes, it keeps him in London, which is a nice city to live in, apparently. But the main thing is what happens with the ancient Roy Hodgson. He really can't be there long term, right? I mean, do they want him to die in the dugout? I just don't understand that appointment. But honestly, he might be out here like Gary Player saying he does 100 press-ups every day. We're still watching him wither away on the touchline, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he needs to use like some sort of megaphone at training just to shout at the guys. The Crystal Palace panicked so hard. They panicked so hard. This is, and yet again, to use some crazy analogies here, you can't go to and like one of these auctions with £10 in your pocket and think you're going to outbid, right? And this is what happened with Palace, was that the bidding started to get too high. Their £10 was starting to feel really short. And they're like, okay, to hell with it. We're just going home with what we know we have. They were on a really good path with Vieira in terms of the introduction of young players. So if you look at it, another young coach would work. And let's also not overlook the fact that Potter fits the kind of personality that they'd have at Crystal Palace. He wants his team to play good football. He'll work with the youngsters, and he'll also do what the owners want. That's how he got the Chelsea job. The Chelsea job was, will you do what we want you to do? Yes. Okay, come in. They didn't even bother with Tuchel. They just said to him, are you willing to work with us like this? And he was like, no, I just coach. And they were like, well, then I don't care who you are. You can bounce. And that's also why the Luis Enrique appointment potentially might be problematic.
Another question, Wahid. Brendan Rodgers, does he have another shot in the Premier League?
Yeah, I'm sure he will. And again, the West Ham one looks like an obvious 100%. Choice for Brendan Rodgers, and it just looks like the natural. It's just one of those things that seems to fit. And I'm sure at some point someone will give Brendan Rodgers another chance.
Nottingham Forest.
Brendan Rodgers is a classic example of a manager who should have left when he was on the up, rather than
after
waiting
the FA Cup.
After the FA Cup, if Brendan Rodgers quit, he would have had a top 6 job by this point, I reckon. Not sure where that was or where it would have been.
United
but
were looking at him. They
Sorry?
were looking.
Spurs should be looking at it.
Spurs were looking at him after the FA Cup.
United might have put their name in the hat with Brendan Rodgers after that FA Cup, and it's just a classic example of probably hanging on too long in that role. He had done all he could possibly achieve in that Leicester job, and he should have called it a day.
The one thing that, and I know we've spoken about it, so that we can finish up, but the fact that Chelsea and Leicester waited for just one game after the international break astounds me. That you knew that these guys had one game left in them, and if it gets to that level, surely especially from a Chelsea point of view, if a manager has one more bad performance in them, surely you should have done it in the international break. You should have at least given them 2 weeks.
That was the problem. They didn't. The Villa game the Villa game absolutely blindsided them. That I don't think that they expected it to be so bad, and for it because let's also remember there's two things here. It happened at home. The fans are having a right go, and they're just like, look, this can't happen anymore. So that's when the decision was made.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if they had, let's say they beat Villa, do you think that Potter then would have had 3 more games?
Yeah.
4, 5.
The whole thing. Just look at the league standings, right? So right now, after that draw against
Chelsea's still 11th.
Chelsea are 11th, right? If they'd won that game against Villa, they'd pretty much be where Villa are now. So you look at it and you say, well, then how bad is Graham Potter if they're in 7th as opposed to 11th? And I think this is how these guys look at it. So it wasn't just one game more or just, the final, this is the final straw. They were just like, okay, we're probably going to beat these guys. So, let's move on from there. And then it was like, what? You mean they beat us 2-0 at home? What kind of crazy stuff is this? And you can't have a manager who can't get his team to score goals. It's just, then what are you doing? What are you doing?
The Aubameyang thing is just.
Would you take me here, Nacho, at Chelsea?
Yeah, Nacho.
Right now, yes.
Well, yes. I look, to tell the truth, I probably would, but I'd look at him as being like signed as a backup, not as the main striker.
Backup to have kind of false 9.
No. Back up to whoever comes in. Flipping hell. If I see Havertz false 9 again, I promise I'll tear out my hair.
I don't know how many chances that guy needed.
Sorry.
I don't understand.
Sorry. I know we're going back to the question from the start, but who do you want? Because I think Chelsea and United are going to be going head to head for very similar players.
Strikers.
For the role. Yeah.
Strikers.
Harry
okay.
Kane.
I would not be against Harry Kane signing. He's a proven striker in the Premier League. I just have a fundamental issue with this £100 million price tag for any player. It's an absolute. It's ridiculous for me.
Low.
Yeah, sure. But but I would look. Even Osimhen is one I'm not 100% sold on. I like the guy. He scores a lot of goals. I'm going to say something ridiculous, right? Because I can't.
That you'd rather have Ivan Toney over Osimhen, because I think I'd say the same thing.
Oh my God! I think I might actually. I think I
was thinking about it yesterday.
Callum Wilson.
And I was thinking I'd rather have Ivan Toney than Osimhen.
Yes.
Why not Callum Wilson?
Because he's got the same calves as Spurs legend Chris Waddle.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, he's just constant. I love Callum Wilson. Absolutely love him. Would sign him on fantasy football every time. And then as soon as I do, he's crocked again. Alexander Isak is another one for me. And if you guys, you remember how I was. Wahid is the one who actually said Isak overrated, and maybe, but the man can play football.
Yeah,
and he definitely has what I think some teams are looking for. Is not that battering ram. That's also, I'm a little uncertain about Tony, because I've not seen Tony plays with his back to goal relatively regularly, right? That isn't what Chelsea are playing at the moment. They want somebody who's a bit of a connector. And that's why like a Joao Felix is great to have in that team, but he's an absolutely atrocious finisher. Like goodness, if the only person worse than him is Mateo Kovacic, who somehow needs to be playing rugby rather than soccer in order to get the ball in. I'm not sure if I'm being totally honest, I'm not sure who I'd like to sign, but it definitely, I'd have my reservations on Osimhen.
Okay.
What about bringing Lukaku back in?
He has to come back, doesn't he?
He does, but he doesn't necessarily have to stick around. Am I against seeing Romelu? Yes, after the way he left. The stuff that was said, all of that and what have you. But a player of his caliber would work in how Chelsea have tried to start playing football now. He's not the kind of guy you lump.
It's so weird. I looked at it the other day and thought that Lukaku didn't work last season, but he would be perfect for Chelsea this season.
Yeah, now. Yes. Yeah, exactly. He plays on the shoulder. Everything that Chelsea were doing under Potter would have worked with the Lukaku there. Except, we still have Raheem Sterling. But anyway, that's another story altogether.
That's a Tuchel signing, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, so I think let's close it off here. We'll talk about strikers some other time. Managers have been fired. Hopefully, we won't have any more fired by the weekend, but it's the Premier League. You never know. West Ham could fire David Moyes by the weekend, but I don't think they have the
quickly. Paul, who's winning this weekend? Liverpool, Arsenal.
Draw.
Score.
If it's a draw, I'll take it, but it's Arsenal.
So you'll take a draw.
I have dreams in my head of a 5-0, but it'll never happen. It'll be 2 or 2-1 something. It's going to be tight. But I don't know what Jurgen Klopp's trying to do, and that's the scary thing for Arteta. I think if you want to win, I'm
leaning Liverpool win,
guys,
because Wahid has seen what happens when you put your hands next to the fire. Some crazy stuff goes down with those guys.
Those guys can play still.
In that case, that means that Man City is going to win the title.
If you catch them on a day when they're in the mood, you can catch numbers from them, and I've experienced that firsthand lately. Yeah. And I don't think it's a team to write off. So my money, Liverpool 2-1.
Yeah.
Shit, Oaks. That means Man City wins the title.
Look, as heartbreaking as it might be, but
guys, if it falls to, that's the one place I think that and the Etihad are the two places we haven't found success, and Old Trafford, but it's going to be tough. I know that. I just need us to score goals. We can create a lot of chances. It's just putting them away. But if you're conceding like we have recently, it's going to be amazing.
And these guys
They're going to live for that game. Yeah. Okay. Massive game this weekend. I'm going to be so scared. But anyway, it's Easter Sunday. So I'm going to go to church instead.
Everybody's going to be praying.
Yeah.
Yo, guys. Yeah. Well, City need Liverpool to do them a favor. So, that's okay. Anyway, we'll be back next week with either me in tears or me celebrating some sort of win. But
just
anyway.
Tears for fears. Tears for fears, bro.
Anyway, thanks, guys, for joining. Have a great week. Enjoy the football. And le sale, cacajizo.